In 2010, a French gamer named Julien Barreaux was sentenced to 2 years in prison for stabbing another man who had killed his avatar in the online game Counter-Strike. Barreaux spent 7 months tracking down his rival's real-life location before attacking him. The judge in the case labeled Barreaux a menace to society due to the extreme nature of his reaction. It's hard to imagine something as trivial as an avatar in a video game leading to the murder of a real person. A violent stabbing, a man's life destroyed, and a story that leaves you wondering what drives a person to cross that line? But what if this was more than just a case of gaming obsession gone too far? What if there was something darker lurking beneath the surface of Julien Barreaux's actions? This isn't your average true crime story. This is one that shatters the boundary between digital and physical worlds. It's a twisted tale of obsession, revenge, and the blurred line between the online and real world. A story that could make you rethink the true cost of digital interactions. It all started with an innocent Counter-Strike match. For many gamers, it was just another day in their online universe, a space where they could escape reality. Julien Barreaux, a regular player, spent his free time immersed in this virtual world. Counter-Strike was his playground, his place to unwind. But it was also a battleground where players could achieve victory or suffer defeat. One night, while deep into the game, Barreaux encountered a player who would change the course of his life forever. The opponent, who went by the username Z0BX, was ruthless, precise, and relentless. The two engaged in a series of high-stakes matches, with Barreaux's avatar constantly getting eliminated by Z0BX. It didn't take long for the tension to rise. The match had taken a personal turn. Barreaux felt humiliated. After all, he had spent years honing his skills, and yet Z0BX seemed to be on another level, making him feel insignificant. But when Z0BX killed his avatar in a particularly cruel and taunting fashion, something snapped inside Barreaux. It wasn't just about the game anymore. It became about pride, about honor, about respect. Losing that battle was more than a mere blow to his ego. It felt like an insult to everything he had built in that digital world. For days, Barreaux's thoughts consumed him. His every waking moment was dedicated to one thing: revenge. It was after that loss that Julien Barreaux made an eerie decision. He would find out who Z0BX was in real life. What began as a thirst for revenge turned into an obsession. Using the game's limited data, Barreaux began tracking every clue about his rival's location, carefully watching every move made by Z0BX in the game. Z0BX wasn't just any random player. He was methodical, calculating. Barreaux studied his playstyle, his strategies, his reactions, his online behavior. He began piecing together fragments of information. Then, through the digital threads of the Counter-Strike game, Barreaux uncovered a breakthrough. Z0BX had mentioned a city he frequented. With this key piece of information, Barreaux expanded his search. He scoured social media platforms, cross-referencing usernames, locations, and photographs. Weeks passed. The obsession grew. Julien was relentless. What started as a casual online match now felt like an all-consuming mission. But even as his hunt continued, strange things began to happen. One day, he noticed that Z0BX had gone silent. No more online activity. No more messages, no more kills. It was as if his opponent had vanished off the face of the earth. But then, Barreaux made a chilling discovery: Z0BX had been active under a different username. His rival had assumed a new identity, attempting to hide in plain sight. This fueled Barreaux's anger. He wasn't just tracking a gamer anymore, he was hunting a man who had crossed a line. It was at that moment, with the full weight of his obsession bearing down on him, that Barreaux decided to take matters into his own hands. Armed with the real-world location of Z0BX, a small town in southern France, he embarked on the next stage of his deadly mission. On a cold autumn evening, Barreaux drove for hours, finally arriving at his target's home. The entire time, his heart raced. Every mile closer felt like the countdown of a bomb ticking toward its final moment. As he stood outside the modest home, the weight of what he was about to do pressed down on him. This wasn't just about winning a game anymore. It wasn't even about Z0BX. It was about proving something to himself, to the world. He had lost in a virtual world, and now he was taking that loss and turning it into something far more dangerous. Without a second thought, he grabbed the knife from the bag he'd carefully packed. He had come here to hurt, to settle a score that only made sense in his own mind. Barreaux broke into the house, silent and swift. His pulse was a drumbeat in his ears, but he didn't hesitate. As Z0BX, now identified as a man named Damien Fournier, was caught off guard, Barreaux lunged. The blade found its mark. By the time authorities arrived, it was too late. Damien Fournier was dead. Julien Barreaux didn't try to flee. He didn't attempt to escape. He stood there, covered in blood, waiting for the police to arrive. His hands were trembling, his mind clouded by a mixture of triumph and regret. When he was arrested and later questioned, the details of the case shocked the world. How could a man's obsession with an online avatar lead to the death of a real person? What drove Julien Barreaux to take such drastic action? How could he justify it? The trial that followed revealed startling inconsistencies in the case. It wasn't just about an innocent gamer losing his avatar in a match. It was a deeply personal journey filled with anger, humiliation, and a thirst for vengeance. But what the trial also uncovered was something far darker than anyone could have expected. Julien Barreaux's obsession with Z0BX had consumed him to the point where he couldn't distinguish between the digital world and the real one. His actions weren't solely motivated by a loss in a video game. They were rooted in an extreme need for control, power, and validation in a world where he had none. As the trial began, a twist emerged. Evidence came to light that stunned everyone in the courtroom. While it was clear that Julien Barreaux had committed the crime, the question remained: was his obsession with Z0BX the only factor behind the killing? What was later discovered about the identity of Z0BX Damien Fournier opened up a chilling new possibility. It turns out that Z0BX was not just any ordinary gamer. In fact, Fournier was involved in far more dangerous online activities, using Counter-Strike as a cover for illegal dealings. Suddenly, the case wasn't just a matter of a gamer seeking revenge. It was tangled in a web of criminal activity that went far beyond what anyone had imagined. But that wasn't the end of the story. As investigators dug deeper into Fournier's life, they uncovered a disturbing connection, one that linked him not only to online gaming communities, but also to a notorious underground group known for trafficking sensitive data. The true scope of Z0BX's life began to unravel, and soon, it became clear that Julien Barreaux had stumbled into a much larger and more dangerous world than he had ever anticipated. What was Barreaux's role in all of this? Was he just an obsessed gamer seeking revenge? Or had he unknowingly become entangled in something far more sinister? The investigation took an even darker turn. And as it became apparent that Barreaux may have been a pawn in a much larger game, the question remained: who were the real masterminds behind this twisted story? When investigators unearthed a disturbing truth about Damien Fournier, aka Z0BX, it became clear that Julien Barreaux's stabbing of Fournier wasn't just the result of a heated online rivalry. No, this was far darker. A deeper web of lies, secrets, and criminal networks began to unravel, and everything we thought we knew about the case turned upside down. In the last chapter, we learned that Julien Barreaux's violent actions weren't merely driven by a video game loss. No, the killing of Damien Fournier was linked to something much darker. Fournier, it turned out, wasn't just a player in an online game. He was deeply involved in illegal online activities, data trafficking, underground cybercrimes, and an organized network of hackers operating in the darkest corners of the web. But here's the twist you weren't expecting. As investigators dug deeper into Fournier's life, they uncovered a shocking revelation. Z0BX wasn't just targeting Barreaux. No, Fournier was tracking Julien for weeks before their fateful meeting. And here's where it gets chilling: Fournier knew about Julien's obsession long before the fatal encounter. A digital trail surfaced that suggested Fournier had been watching Barreaux's every move for months. He knew Julien's real identity, his location, and most disturbingly, his family's details. How could Fournier have possibly known all this? The answer came in a dark, horrifying twist. Fournier had been using the very game they'd both played, Counter-Strike, to track players and harvest their personal data, blending his gaming habits with dangerous criminal intentions. It wasn't just about killing avatars anymore. Fournier had been collecting personal information for the underground criminal syndicate he was running. And in his mind, Julien Barreaux wasn't a victim, he was a target. But what does that mean for Julien? Was his violent retaliation a result of an innocent gamer's rage? Or was he unknowingly involved in a deadly game of cat and mouse orchestrated by one of the most dangerous cybercriminals the authorities had ever seen? To complicate matters further, investigators found something chilling in Barreaux's digital history: hidden messages, coded emails, and unusual activity leading back to a hacker group that Fournier was affiliated with. It was clear that Barreaux, while obsessed with his revenge, was also unknowingly caught in a larger, more sinister conspiracy. Remember when Julien tracked Z0BX across the internet, hoping for revenge? It turns out, he wasn't just tracking any player, he was tracking a man whose ties to global cybercrime were so deep that Barreaux had inadvertently stepped into a storm he wasn't prepared for. Now the stakes were higher than ever. Barreaux wasn't just facing the consequences of his violent actions. He was caught in the crossfire of an international network of criminals, people who would stop at nothing to protect their secrets. But the most shocking discovery came when the authorities uncovered a connection to Julien's own past. You won't believe this, but Barreaux had ties to the hacker group Fournier was part of. Not as an active member, but as someone who had unknowingly crossed paths with them years earlier. In his younger days, before he was consumed by the world of Counter-Strike, Julien had worked for a tech company specializing in security software. That company, though seemingly innocent, had actually been a front for laundering stolen data. What's worse, during his tenure, Barreaux had unknowingly worked on projects linked to some of the very data being trafficked through the underground hacker network Fournier was a part of. In short, Julien Barreaux's obsession with Z0BX wasn't just a twisted personal vendetta, it was the culmination of a series of events, decisions, and coincidences that led him down a dark path. Tangled with dangerous criminals, the revelation hit hard. Barreaux wasn't just a man with a violent reaction to a lost game. He was a man who had been unknowingly involved in a global cybercrime network. And it was no longer just a matter of revenge, it was a question of survival. As the authorities investigated deeper, Barreaux's name surfaced on a list of potential targets within the hacker syndicate. He wasn't just a victim of a dangerous game, he was now the game's next target. Fournier's associates, angry at his betrayal, were now coming after Barreaux. But just as this information started circulating, a startling new twist emerged. Julien Barreaux had gone missing. No one knew where he had gone. One day he was in police custody, being questioned about his involvement in the conspiracy. The next day he vanished without a trace. Did he escape? Or was he taken? There's no evidence of Barreaux escaping on his own. No record of him being released. All signs pointed to a much more terrifying possibility. That Julien was taken by the very people he had been running from. Who took him? And what does this mean for his future? The questions surrounding his disappearance opened up a whole new set of mysteries. Was Barreaux being silenced by the cybercriminal syndicate? Or did someone or something else intervene in his fate? And what about the larger syndicate? Is this just the tip of the iceberg in a much more massive and terrifying underground world?